From student visa to 485 visa, what you need to know. Hi, my name is Abby from Migration Centre of Australia, and today we're going to talk about what you need to know to be able to get the graduate visa. If you've just finished your studies and you're wondering what comes next, if staying back in Australia, working, traveling, and doing what you want to do after you've completed your studies sounds like what you want to do next, listen up. We're going to break down everything that you need to cover and need to know about the temporary graduate visa, subclass 485. Let's get started. So what is the 485 visa? The 485 visa allows anyone that studied in Australia to continue to live and work or travel or do whatever they like after they've completed their studies. It's a way to recognize in a manner that you've supported the Australian economy, the Australian education system, you've contributed, and that further then allows you to kind of stay in Australia and potentially work or lead up to something else. So what this means is it's designed for you to gain practical work experience in Australia, and then you can potentially use those skills for your skilled migration later on as well. It's really important that you choose the right stream of the graduate visa when you're completing your application, because there are multiple streams in this. If you've already lodged your application in the wrong stream, you cannot change the stream later. You may have to withdraw the application and potentially reapply for another graduate visa. Let's talk about the Post-Vocational Education Work stream. This stream is for graduates who have completed a diploma, advanced diploma, associate degree, or a trade qualification in Australia. That means you've completed a vocational education training program, a VET qualification. To qualify for this stream, you must ensure that your qualification is related to an occupation on the medium to long-term strategic skill list, which is the MLT SSL. If your qualification is related to one of those occupations in that list, you may qualify. So what do you need to do and ensure to qualify and apply for a 485? You must ensure that your course was completed in Australia on a student visa. The duration of the course should have been 2 years, which means at least 16 calendar months of studying full-time. If you've taken any breaks or gaps in between, that does not count towards your 2 years. So if you've studied, for example, a Cert 4 that was only 1 year, we always recommend to do a diploma as well, and you can combine all of that study period, even if it's across multiple student visas, as long as the total duration is 2 years of study, which is at least 16 calendar months. And both of those qualifications should be related to your occupation that you've selected when you're completing your 485 visa application. At the time of application, you must ensure that you lodge your 485 visa within 6 months of finishing your course or your student visa expiring. You must also ensure that you're not subject to Section 48 bar. That means you haven't had a visa refused and are currently on a bridging visa, for example. You can be on a bridging visa A or B, that's also fine, and still lodge your 485 visa. You must also ensure that before you lodge your application, you've got your Australian Federal Police clearance and that you've got the required results in the English test before you lodge your application. We recently had a client who had lodged their own application, but in one of the components, they didn't get 6.5. They'd completed a PhD. So this is not about the VET, this is about the post-higher education work stream. But because they didn't get the required score, the application was later refused after they've lodged it, which puts them in a really difficult situation because they may not be able to get the 485 visa now. Which leads me on to the second stream, the post-higher education work stream. This is a stream for people who have completed a bachelor degree or higher qualification, again, spanning across 2 years minimum and completing at least 16 calendar months of study. This can include a bachelor degree, a master's degree, or a doctoral degree. Now, you must ensure some people come to Australia and then they will do a master's degree, which is either 1 year or 18 months. You must complete a qualification, which is for at least 104 weeks. And when you get your confirmation of enrollment, which is your COE, it'll generally mention the duration in weeks. So it should be at least 104 weeks to complete your full qualification. Now, the vet qualification is always granted for 18 months duration, whereas the post-higher education work stream, it can be granted for a longer period, minimum 2 years, and up to 4 years, depending on what you've studied. The main benefit of the higher education is not only do you qualify for a longer period, but you also don't have to fit into one of the occupations like you do with the vocational stream. So it doesn't matter what you've studied as part of your qualification for a bachelor, master's, or a PhD, you will still qualify to get a graduate visa, even if it's in an occupation that's not on any list. In general, for the 485 visa, you also need to ensure that you are 35 years old or under. If you have turned 36, you will not be eligible to apply, except for certain circumstances. Example, you're going for a PhD. Now let's talk about the final stream, the second post-higher education work stream. This is specifically for people who have studied in a regional area of Australia and they've continued to live in a regional area of Australia for 2 years on the graduate visa. If that is the case, they can reapply for the second 485 visa, which means they get the initial 2 years or potentially more, and then the second graduate visa. Now, if you do meet this criteria, you may be eligible, but you need to check the postcode for where you have been living and working. When you're lodging your 485 visa, it's really important to ensure that you've been compliant with all of your student visa conditions. So have you maintained health insurance? Have you met all the course requirements? Was there a time that you didn't study? And was that approved leave by the university based on compelling or compassionate grounds? If you have met all the criteria, it's fine. You should be able to get your 485 visa without any issues. Even if the department finds out, and this has happened for some cases that have escalated in the past, that you were working more than 48 hours a fortnight, which is your student visa condition while you're studying in course. Some people were going and driving an Uber, for example. The department actually asked Uber for all the records of that student and found out that they were working more than 48 hours cumulatively based on the experience that they've claimed through jobs and what they thought they could get away with when it came to driving an Uber under an ABN, which is a business name. Remember that having this access that the department has, they have the ability to do a lot of checks, and that's exactly what you pay them for when you lodge your visa application. So it's really important to make sure that you stay compliant and not breach any visa conditions, because if it does get caught, it can result in a refusal of your application, or worse, if you're found to have provided misleading or fraudulent information, they can put a ban on you for 3 years from applying for any other visa for Australia. If you have any questions regarding the graduate visa, leave a comment below or contact us for more information.